All right, next we have Mr. Nathan Jackson, who would like to speak to us regarding a complaint. Mr. Jackson, hello. If you would just state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Nathan Jackson. I reside at 4511 Esther Court here in Columbus. Ladies and gentlemen, the council, Madam Mayor, while most of you consider this a trivial matter, I trust you'll hear what I have to say and be as outraged as I am concerning the abhorrent refusal of the city departments to actually enforce the law that is written.
Yeah, you might want to speak just a little bit. There we go.
How's
Gotcha.
that? Can everybody hear me?
Better.
Wonderful.
I'm having a hard time hearing.
That's okay. In the summer of 2014, my neighbor graded their property to allow the addition of an above-ground pool. While no homeowners association exists within my immediate community, there is a covenant that prohibits such an addition as this. I truly believe, however, that in this particular instance, a person is allowed to make these decisions for themselves without the involvement of their neighbors. However, since the property was regraded, drainage at the rear of the lot was required to be redone in order to allow the rainwater that flows down the hill that my community rests upon an avenue out. This drainage system was inadequately placed and constructed. This has caused a significant amount of water to back up onto my property due to the non-existent maintenance that should be conducted on a semi-regular basis. I contacted the Division of Special Enforcement in October of 2014. Central to my complaint was the Columbus Code of Ordinance, Part 2, Article 3, Section 13-109, which states, in a natural drainage situation from one lot to another shall be unlawful for the owner of the lower lot to restrict the flow of water willfully or by neglect or otherwise to cause water to stagnate on the upper lot or lots. The layout of the subdivision from when it was built was designed to have water from storm runoff flow to the rear of the property, then further down the hill out to a drainage culvert that's owned and maintained by the city. After reviewing the online aerial photographs dating back to 2007, you can clearly see the water flowing between the houses at the rear of the yards. An officer from Special Enforcement arrived in 2014 to review the case and told us that the neighbors were in violation of this ordinance. He left his contact information on their door. The neighbors got the message, and I spent the next 72 hours with police officers at my residence in order to quell the retaliation my family received in the form of harassment, death threats, and slinging the vilest of insults. Whether or not a written citation was issued is irrelevant. The neighbors, at the request of Special Enforcement, adjusted their rear drainage pipes and allowed the water to continue to flow down the hill. Life continued on, with a small water problem remaining, though manageable. In July of 2015, the water issue had returned in much greater force and continued to deteriorate dramatically as time went on. My household took steps to alleviate the problem on our side of the fence to no avail, spending countless hours in my backyard in order to see if a solution can be found without having to involve the neighbors. It's important to note that at no time did any work that was conducted alter or increase the flow of water that was originally intended by the drainage plan when the subdivision was built in 2002. I spoke with the owner of the neighboring property in early January to inform him of the water issue to see if they could be willing to action a solution. On the 15th of January, the homeowner reluctantly sent a plumber to assess the situation. The plumber stated to us, as we happened to be home at the time, that the pipe that was laid for drainage was too small and improperly installed. Even though the homeowner was aware of this information, he's not taken any steps to address this issue. I contacted the Special Enforcement Division. They stated on the phone on 27 January that according to city records, this issue had been resolved in 2014 and there was nothing they can do. I reiterated, yes, the issue had been resolved in 2014. However, by neglect, the issue had represented itself. We were told by Officer Smith that he would come by the next day and review the situation. And it was very important to note that no officer arrived at my residence and no courtesy phone call was made to reschedule. Only after I had repeatedly called did I finally get Officer Smith on the phone. He told me yet again this issue did not fall under his department. There was nothing he could do. I spoke with his supervisor, Officer Poole, who originally came out in 2014 to assess this issue, who in a rude and condescending tone said that this was not his department. The water issue was mine alone. In fact, the water issue did not exist. After this phone call, I put my thoughts to paper and addressed the managers of the city council members. Everyone that may have an interest in this case was a recipient of this email. I placed phone calls to other departments trying to, again, find some resolution to this issue. On 5 February at 1:24 p.m. is when this case becomes very interesting. My wife received a phone call from Mr. Brown at the Office of Public Works. In this conversation, he stated that a letter was being sent to my residence informing us that our complaint had come to its conclusion and that nothing was going to be done in regards to the city intervening. In addition, he stated that the water problem was not as significant as we make it out to be according to the information he had received. My wife asked him where he had received this information. He stated from Officer Poole. When my wife's retort to this statement was, if you had just signed and dated a letter with this information, it would mean that Officer Poole just perjured himself, as he has not been out to my residence since 2014. It was at that point all dynamics of this situation changed. He called my wife back at 2:22 p.m., told her that he had removed the letter from distribution, and I received a phone call from Miss Short, manager of Special Enforcement, who was stating that an officer would be at my residence within minutes. Officer Underwood arrived at 2:47 p.m. He heard the complaint, took pictures of the water issue, agreed that if this was his yard, he'd be as angry, as upset as I am. However, he attempted to explain further.
It's okay, that's just a warning. I'm re-saying for 5 minutes.
It's fine. However, he attempted to explain further that the code we are talking about only applies if there's a dam built by the neighbor or the drain is physically obstructed by trash or boards. He was adamant that the natural terrain was at fault. I explained to him that this terrain is artificial after the grading project conducted in 2014. What is most disheartening is that he agreed that the water was restricted, and yet still I was refused the city's intervention. After he departed, approximately 1 hour later, we placed a call to Officer Underwood trying to determine if the meeting that was mentioned to us during his visit that was scheduled for the evening of 5 February about this water issue that would have multiple department heads present was an open or closed door meeting. We were told it was canceled. In addition, we received a call from Mr. Brown again at 4:45 p.m., in which he stated that this matter had been resolved. No new updates to the course of action would be made, and a letter will be in the mail. I received a call from Mr. Ellis from the Department of Public Health. During that conversation, he told me that there was no health violation. However, if mosquitoes are found to be breeding in this stagnated water caused from this issue, that I would be held accountable and fined from the city. I did, however, receive one singular piece of advice from the city's Department of Engineering, that if I was to go out by a high-pressure hose nozzle, that I might be able to snake the pipe and get the water moving. This has seemed to work for the time being. The water has begun to flow. Though the question I pose to this council is this: if the only way to fix the water problem is to break the law by clearing pipes on property that is not my own, thereby trespassing, what is the recourse that I have when this situation represents itself in a few weeks, a month, a year? I keep getting told that this is a civil matter between neighbors, and I need to hire an attorney. After consulting with one in the Columbus area, the advice I received is this: good luck getting the city to enforce their own laws. And then I can take this to court, but it'll cost approximately $10,000 before a judgment is granted. If 13109 states in a natural drainage situation from one lot to another, it shall be unlawful for the owner of the lower lot to restrict the flow of water willfully or by neglect or otherwise cause water to stagnate on the upper lot or lots. And the preceding law is much more interesting. And 13-110.1 states, when stagnant water is being maintained on any lot or premise in violation of the preceding section, it shall be the duty of the health officer or any responsible servant of the city to notify the party or parties of such violation. The written notice shall set forth how, when, and in what manner corrective measures are to be performed to comply with the preceding section, and eliminate the stagnated water or otherwise provide adequate control of public health hazards or nuisances caused by the stagnated water. The code further describes a nuisance in previous sections. In 13-98, the existence of any things mentioned in this article and the existence of any matter or thing in the corporate limits of the city which shall or does tend to the immediate annoyance of the citizens in general, or which may be manifestly injurious to the public health or safety, or tend to corrupt the manners and morals of the people, or any considerable portion thereof, shall be, and the same is hereby declared to be a nuisance and being abated as such. I'm a simple soldier. I take pride in the code of ethics and the duty my oath compels me to uphold. Is this not the same type of oath that each officer and legislative member in America is held to? Integrity by far is the greatest asset of a soldier and the greatest thing that makes us human. City employees surrounding this issue have shown them to have neither ethics nor integrity. I care little about disciplinary action by this body, and that is neither my intent nor desire. At no time should a civil servant be allowed to commit perjury in a report to influence the outcome of a case. At no time should the city officials be so corrupted and blind as to allow this situation to go unanswered. When did it become the norm in today's society that enforcement officers pick and choose which laws to enforce and how to enforce them? I believe that this is the most frustrating thing about this issue. Being a soldier, and anyone that has ever served will agree with this statement, that the regulation states what the regulation states. It is not a soldier's right to interpret the regulation, just as an enforcement officer has no right to interpret what the law says. They are merely there to enforce as it is written. If they are not, then the law needs to be rewritten. However, that is not the choice for enforcement officers. It's the job of our elected officials. We are a nation, city, or community of laws. We are anarchists. Unlike most soldiers that come and go, I've made Columbus my permanent home, and I believe in this city, and that here would be a place I would enjoy raising my children. I simply ask that this body act to uncover why this complaint has fallen on deaf ears, and to ensure that the Special Enforcement Division acts upon their mission statement, along with all other responsible parties within the city body of governance. That in this case, the city would in addition use the law to ensure that adequate measures are in place to remedy this issue. The soil around my house is so saturated that according to Mr. Jim Berry, drainage technician for the city of Columbus, it'll take a full year for the soil that my property sits on to dry out. Until that time, I will constantly live with the anxiety that there may be looming foundation damage to my house, that my children cannot use their backyard, that I will have to be watchful for ants continuing to move into my house due to the soil saturation, that the standing water that rests on my property that is caused by this issue will breed mosquitoes that will eventually attract frogs and snakes into my yard, further putting at risk the safety and my children's physical well-being.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me ask you some questions here.
Of
Give
course.
you a chance to take a little break. That's a whole lot of information, so
Yes,
I'm working
ma'am.
with as fast as I could hear. And certainly I'm sure there would be other questions, but just from what I hear, what I thought I heard, it sounds like you do have what they call a private nuisance, where some private person has done something that is injuring your property.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, because an entity, whether it be the federal, state, or local government, has laws which prohibits that, does not necessarily mean that they're publicly enforced. So
I fail to
think-
understand, ma'am. If we have
Right.
a law, why can't we enforce it?
Well, it could be that it is civilly enforced. And so that's what I'm struggling with, is what laws there are exactly. Like, for instance, you can bring claims all the time that somebody injured you in a car accident because they were exceeding the speed limit, which is a public law, and they ran a stop sign, which is public, whatever. And so, and thereafter, whoever hit them for money and insurance coverage and so on and so forth.
I agree with ma'am.
Hold on a second, let me finish. To remedy the problem. So I'm trying to sift through, because what we really want here is the solution, correct? I mean, you want this resolved.
Yes, ma'am.
Not a law school course, not, any of that other good stuff. And so I'm not sure who the attorney was that you went to go see at first. I think the flippant response you got may suggest to you that you need to get another opinion. But these types of nuisances are very serious issues, and they certainly can. Every case has its own nuance and its own texture, and will have its own life and journey. But these are things that can be resolved quite quickly, and sometimes they can even be resolved pro se, depending on the amount of damages. So you gave us a whole lot of information, it seems to me, and there were a lot of things involving the city that I'm very concerned about, and some of the statements you made regarding the tone and the reaction and so forth. It sounds like that frustration and disconnect, and whether or not there was rude or inappropriate behavior, stems from the nut of the problem, which is the city has somehow determined that this is a private civil matter that may well violate public laws, but it's private civil matter. And so I think that it may be that that's where this is going on.
Ma'am, that may be possible,
Yes,
but they
yeah.
did come out in 2014 and have them adjust their drain pipes. So basically what happened...
And had who adjust the drain pipes?
Officer Poole came out, saw the issue, left his contact information on their door, said, you guys need to adjust your drain pipes. This water
Right.
issue needs to go.
Right.
They freaked out. I spent, like I said earlier in my statement, was 3 days with officers at my house from this. But they did adjust their drain pipes, and everything kind of went away. So what I'm assuming is to happen is officer came, said, you need to fix this. They fixed it. Officer came back, said, hey, good job.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing was really need to be done. They fixed it. And that's fine. But where is it then a year later when this issue represents itself because of inadequate maintenance on a drainage easement, that why can we not have the officers do exactly what they did prior to and say, hey, this is a water issue that needs to be fixed? I have pictures of it, ma'am. I can show you. There's a literal swamp in my backyard. It's literally I can step down into it, and there's up to my knee of mucky, nasty mud that just stinks, smells. It's a swamp. I literally have a swamp that grows in my backyard.
Okay, well, Mr. City Manager, do you have any thoughts on this, or the city attorney? I mean, it's a private nuisance, I think we agree on that. I think what he's asking for is repeated civil, public enforcement somehow. So anyway, yeah, did you want to speak to this?
Madam Mayor, staff passed
Yeah.
to you a letter to each of you, and I really don't. I think you've really summed it up, Madam Mayor. It appears to be private property matter between two property owners, and
And it looks like the decision was made that the property was not in violation of the two specific code sections. It does not mean that you're not being damaged.
right.
Okay, it does not mean you're not being damaged. It just means
And I
that-
agree with you, Madam
Yes.
Mayor, but the problem is, though, is that also in a grading situation where a property has been regraded, does not require a city permit to do that in order so that you do it correctly, where that's not on file. There's no permit for that. They just came back there and ripped up their backyard, and that's fine. I have no problems with that if they were done it right, and I don't have a swamp growing in my backyard. But if there was a grading project that was done, it was inadequately done, it was improperly done, then why is not the city diving into this and saying, this is wrong,
Yeah.
we need to fix this?
Well, I want to hear from the city attorney, and we've got a counselor that has a question too. And I want to look into this just because you've made me curious, but with a lot of information here, and I'd like to see. But my gut reaction is that this is exactly the reason why there are separation of powers between the judiciary and the legislature, because courts are uniquely equipped to hear this amount of information and make a determination related to a specific dispute related to property. But again, I want to make sure we're enforcing laws that have public impact and all that good stuff, and so I'm happy to take a look at it. With that, Clifton, did you want to say something?
I got a couple of comments, Mayor. Since from this, I can't determine what all the facts are, and I don't think this council can, and it's not fair for you as a council body to be put in this position to try to resolve a claim. I would suggest that the city engineer take a look at this property, that this gentleman consult an attorney with some real estate knowledge that can look into whether a developer has made a mistake here. If this is a new house, is there a warranty that might cover something like this? Has the upstream neighbor taken action or built a structure that has caused damage that there was improper? Normally, you're entitled to the natural flow if you're a downstream owner. Well, we don't know what the upstream owner has done, so there's a whole lot of questions that need to be answered.
And we've got another counselor that wants to speak, but I can tell you, Mr. Jackson, I'm happy to get with the city manager, the people who are involved, see how much of this I can sort through, and then give you a buzz.
I look forward to your phone call.
But I suspect it's going to be a recommendation that you seek some sort of private legal advice. And there's all sorts of referrals that we can make to the state bar, who has referral systems, and local bar associations that have referral systems. So you get to somebody who knows what they're doing. And time is of the essence, because there are time limits on claims that you
4
may
years.
have.
I looked it up.
Yeah,
4
so
years.
well, if it's continuing, see, these are the kind of things that lawyers know. If it's continuing, there may be some roll along of that, but I'm going to let a lawyer who looks at your case advise you in that regard. Let's see here, Mr. Baker.
Yeah, thank you. And I apologize. I went back to my records, and I don't have any information until February of 16, so from you on this particular case. But I did ask the city manager to please look into it and follow up. I am concerned. Do you know what is the source of the water? I mean, is it just rainwater, or is it?
Yes, sir. It is rainwater. Basically,
Okay.
the property sits, the entire subdivision, which is one street cul-de-sac, sits on a hill. And then on the backside of where my property lives, which is, I believe, north side of it, on the north side of this street, there's another hill that goes up.
Okay.
So basically, my property and the properties along the northern edge of this street catch all of the rainwater that comes down the hill from east to west. as well as we catch all the rainwater from north to south.
One thing you did mention, you said there was some type of departmental meeting that was canceled.
Yes, sir. From what I was told from from when Officer Underwood arrived, he took a look at this and said, yes, it's restricted, but this law only applies if there's trash or boards or something that you can tangibly see that's blocking the drain pipe. But, I mean, there you can see the pipe. It's not working. It hasn't worked for the better part since July. But, yeah,
I
I'm
mean, I
not
would
getting
like the
anything.
city manager to take a look with our engineering and see if we can get you an engineering.
I've had engineering out to my residence, sir.
Did
They looked at it and they said, yes, there's a pipe down there. It's not working.
And that was it, okay.
And so, I mean, because it is a private matter, but it is a nuisance, and it's going to soon morph into a health hazard. As this water continues to stagnate, this is going to breed mosquitoes. And so from the Department of Public Health, they tell me, hey, you got to treat that, you got to fix that, you got to get that water off your property, or we're going to fine you, and we're going to cite you.
Mr. City Attorney, is our officers the only ones that can cite environmental court issues, or can a private citizen request an issue to go to environmental court?
No, you have to call a policeman or a special enforcement officer to look into an alleged set of facts that would rise to a charge. So,
But that would be a criminal or quasi-criminal
Right.
charge. He could bring a private claim in a civil court.
right. This gentleman, in my opinion, needs some serious legal advice. I don't know if he needs an engineering report or he can get something from our engineering department that could help him, but
Right. I would like for our department to take a
Right.
look at it, to see, in
Right.
fact, to take a look at the grading issue, whether it was no permit issued or work done without a permit, clarify the permit issue,
Right.
to see if we can understand what happened, and then hopefully get him an engineering resolution, and then, yes, it may fall into his hands to resolve, but at least he may have more understanding of what to do.
I really don't mind about damages, sir. I don't care about damages. I just want the water to go away.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's the, damages don't have to be monetary.
I don't.
Okay,
I
so,
just need the water to move.
Ma-
okay.
Madam Mayor,
Yep.
I'll be happy to have the Public Works Director and our city engineer to take a look.
Yeah.
Obviously, they've already looked.
Well, I think,
And-
let's do this.
and-
Let's get updated on where we are and what we do, so we don't just send them out futilely to do what they've already done already. I mean, let's get with the city attorney, you and me, see what they've already done, and then what else might be done that could be helpful, perhaps, and then make the appropriate referrals, because I suspect you're more in the private sector than the public sector. But that's just a judgment
And
at this
if it
point.
comes to that, ma'am, then that's
Yeah.
what it comes to. But
Okay.
I don't have $10,000 to pay
Well,
an
and
attorney.
again, I'm not going to second guess that lawyer because I don't know what y'all talked about, but you
He
need
said
to
even
talk to
litigate
some other
this through
folks. You need to talk with
But
some
if,
other folks.
Yeah, but if the problem was resolved at one point and then it's come back from your comments,
Yes, sir.
it seems like it could be resolved again. And
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm
and
saying, sir.
if we could help, it doesn't mean we can get a crew out there to fix it for you.
I'm not
until we
asking
look
for a
at it,
crew to
but if
come
we can
fix
get you
it.
some help,
If-
information-wise, I would like to see us do that.
If in 2014, Special Enforcement did something about this, and then now they refuse to do it again, just because by neglect, this issue has represented itself, and therein
Yeah.
lies an issue. But, just telling someone, hey, you know what, you need to do some maintenance on your drain pipe out there, why don't you
Right.
go and snake the pipe?
Sure.
If they can just do that, that would make my life so much easier,
I
and maybe
understand.
alleviate this swamp that's growing.
I understand.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And you also get a judgment saying that, by the way. Let's see, Counselor Huff.
I was sitting here looking at pictures. There's storage units in the backyard.
No, sir. I have some pictures
No,
on
I just want to ask a question based on what I'm looking at.
Okay.
The houses around you have storage units or so?
There is one that's
One has-
upstream from me.
Okay. And the privacy fence, that's upstream,
That's downstream.
downstream? Okay. Okay, and the water's coming from which direction?
The water is coming from the upstream, which is where the storage shed is placed, and that flows along the natural where these two hills meet at the bottom of that big old hill that you see. It should be off on your left-hand side as you're looking at that storage unit. There is a natural crevice that meets right there. And when this property was regraded in 2014, which is where the privacy fence is, which is downstream from me, that natural crevice was interrupted which then caused all of this to backflow. And it backflows directly onto my property, and then extends for 10, 15 feet. And it is a knee-deep mud hole of wonderful George Clay.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, we have Counselor Barnes.
Excuse me, I didn't quite hear all you, did you say you were are you military?
Yes, sir. I'm currently active duty.
Well, did you go to JAG? Why not go to JAG?
JAG doesn't support civil matters. They would just recommend me off post.
What did they say? What did JAG say?
They would recommend me off post to a civil lawyer. They don't
Okay.
handle civil cases that are within the city. So I did try that avenue.
Okay.
I wonder, too, if they might, and again, we're going to do what we said we're going to do, get back with you, but I bet they have referrals that they make to get you
Absolutely.
a lawyer who can actually respond to your specific type of claim.
And absolutely. And again, it boiled down to the fact that I don't have $5,000 to $10,000 to litigate this.
Yeah, I just, again, I think you need to talk to some
I
other
just
folks.
don't have the money on
Okay.
my
All
meager
right, well,
soldier
we're going
salary.
to take a look and get with you from our standpoint, and then see if we can't refer you to the appropriate entities
Appreciate
that can
that, Madam
refer
Mayor.
you
I look forward to
specifically,
your
perhaps. Okay.
council's response.
Thank you. Thank
Appreciate
you
your time.
much.